This is what the Nashua River looked like in the 1960s. Rated one of America's most polluted rivers, dyed a bright red from raw sewage industrial waste that was dumped directly into the river without regulation. However, following the implementation of federal, state, and local laws and the tireless efforts of activist Marion Stoddart, towns, and the Nashua River Watershed Association,
This is what the Nash looks like in 2021. Hi, my name is Amy. I'm Amelia Potash.
And I'm Aiden.
And I'm Robin.
And I'm Arian.
And we are part of the Groton School's Envirothon team. The town of Groton has had a long history of environmental protection, and we believe that in the face of now climate change, Groton can do the same and again demonstrate resilience.
Groton is a town of 11,000 people in Middlesex County and is a part of the Nashua River watershed. The gorgeous 37.5-mile-long Nashua River flows through Groton, which, though generally not safe for drinking straight out of the river or swimming in, provides agricultural and recreational value as a part of the wild and scenic river system. Its tributary, the Squanicook River, runs along the western border of Groton. Groton also has a few ponds and lakes, notably the Whitney Pond, Badacook Pond, and the Lost Lake.
The town of Groton is divided into two water supply districts, Groton and West Groton. 41% of Groton residents get their water from the Groton Water Department, whereas 13% get their water from the West Groton Water Supply District. The remaining population receive water from private on-site wells. The town has two water treatment plants, several wells, two water storage tanks, and multiple pump stations. Groton, which is the water supply district our school is located in, and the focus of our analysis, receives water from three wells, supplied by natural aquifers. To protect the quality of these aquifers, the Zone 2 recharge areas around them are considered. Water pumped from the Badacook Pond well has naturally occurring iron and manganese that is removed through a green sand filtration process at the Badacook Pond water treatment plant.
As for sewage, the town of Groton purchased capacity and transfers its sewage through pipes to the Pepperell wastewater treatment plant, at which grit removal, aeration tanks, clarifiers, and UV radiation treat wastewater before it is finally discharged into the Nashua River.
stormwater management in Groton is a mixture of green and gray infrastructure. The fundamental principle is to keep water as on-site as possible so that it doesn't run off and collect contaminants. For example, detention ponds and bioswales are being built at the Indian Hill Music Center construction site. The town's zoning and stormwater regulations also encourage low-impact development, wetland preservation, erosion control, and limits on impervious surfaces. We conversed with Michelle Collette and Ailey McHugh, who are both in charge of Groton's stormwater management. We realized that, thanks in part to Groton's rural setting,
because we have so much open space that can accept that water, like the whole town really is just a huge sponge that these things empty into.
Other than the human benefit of Groton's water resources, we must not forget the essential role of water in Groton's ecosystems. Precipitation in the forests and moist soils provides precious water for trees and vegetation, which in turn helps slow runoff to ensure streams and rivers don't overflow or rush too quickly. Groton's wetlands, for example, provide habitat for a variety of plant and animal species, including 7 types of turtles, such as the Blandings turtle. Streams and ponds are crucial for sustaining the biodiversity of many aquatic animals.
To further investigate how local organizations are protecting our water resources against climate change, we interviewed a variety of people, including Martha Morgan from the Nashua River Watershed Association, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the water quality and conservation of the Nashua River; Catherine Lange from the Massachusetts River Alliance, who has successfully advocated for more statewide regulations regarding rivers and streams; and Emma Lord from the Wild and Scenic Rivers Program, a program dedicated to protecting the Nashua River, which is a designated scenic river free of impoundment. The most significant effects of climate change on Groton water resources are droughts, increased temperature, and intense periods of increased precipitation. Droughts can be characterized as abnormally dry periods, caused by precipitation deficit and evapotranspiration that will only become more common with climate change. The 2016 to 2017 flash drought was the most significant drought in Massachusetts since the 1960s, and Groton was declared by the Mass Government Drought Status Map at a warning level drought from July to October. In 2020, we had another significant drought that lasted most of the year.
these droughts have had detrimental effects on our drinking water and environment. Firstly, prolonged drought leads to depletion of our natural aquifers. To combat the low levels of drinking water supplies, an obvious but very necessary regulation is the emergency water ban, which the Groton Water Department implemented in the summers of 2016 and 2020, that required all irrigation systems to be turned off permanently. However, these bans are a last resort, and more proactive measures have also been taken. Groton mandatorizes an odd-even irrigation program every May to September, which restricts the amount of watering days and watering times. Moreover, the department installed a new pump on the Whitney well that allowed for less intensive but a greater capacity of pumping. All irrigation systems are also retrofitted with a moisture sensor, which conserves water on days that it rains. Currently, the largest barrier in water efficiency and conservation is actually the public. It's surprisingly hard to convince people not to water their lawns every day. But education programs by the Groton Water Department and the nonprofits such as the Nashua River Watershed Association will be instrumental in changing the opinions and lifestyles of Groton residents. In the meantime, legislative action will control our water withdrawals. In addition to the town irrigation restrictions mentioned above, statewide laws are being advocated for by the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance, a legislation-oriented nonprofit which we interviewed.
Mass Rivers has been advocating for a bill in the state house that would make water conservation during drought uniform across a drought region, and drought regions are essentially by county lines, so that when a drought comes, all the water users are abiding by the same water conservation rules as everybody else.
Another issue that arises from drought is decreasing water quality. The reason is simple: less water, less solute to dilute contaminants. The 2016 drought, as well as continuous heavy summer pumping over the past 30 years, resulted in increased manganese level at the Whitney Pond wells to now above the state recommended amount. Exposure to manganese may be harmful and could cause issues with piping. Infrastructure, again, provides only a short-term solution. By September, the Groton Water Department aims to submit a permit application to expand existing and create new water treatment facilities to help treat the Whitney wells' additional flows.
There's also an environmental impact of drought. Water levels in large bodies of water, such as the Nashua River, are low, and smaller wetlands and streams dry up, harming wetland habitat and species, meaning overall forest biodiversity declines. Trees become more vulnerable to storms and uprooting, increasing erosion and reduced bank stability when intense precipitation occurs. Climate change and warming temperatures facilitate algal blooms and aquatic invasive species. In Groton, the main threat to our biodiversity is the water chestnut, which creates an impenetrable mat on ponds and rivers that replaces ecologically critical native plants and species, depletes oxygen levels, and blocks sunlight. The Nashua River Water Association has removed over 2,700 tons of water chestnut from the Nashua River in the Groton-Pepperell area. However, with consistently high temperatures in the summer, this problem will likely persist into the future.
In addition to drought, climate change is likely going to affect the typical precipitation cycle of Massachusetts, leading to more frequent and intense rainfall. These flooding events now occur 85% more frequently than they did 60 years ago.
Flooding has rapid and direct effects on residents, such as disrupting traffic and emergency services, which is why 44% of Groton's residents valued flooding as the most critical climate hazard in a town poll. Groton's growing population and increased land development makes effective stormwater management even more necessary.
Intense flooding destroys wildlife habitats and disrupts natural migrational and reproductive cycles of aquatic animals.
To combat more severe precipitation events, twofold of solutions have been and should continue to be developed: infrastructural and natural. Like most stormwater systems in Massachusetts, Groton's are also aging and have been designed with rainfall data that is no longer accurate. As a result, Groton has a problem with undersized culverts and easily flooded roads. Other than updating existing infrastructure, the Stormwater Board should focus more on green infrastructure. While concrete underground structures cannot expand or move in response to changing conditions, vegetation can shift, and this agility and adaptability will help us develop more resilience to ever-changing rainfall patterns. The obstacle to upgrading our stormwater system is cost, which has partly been mitigated through a recently established Stormwater Utility Enterprise Fund that implements a small tax on town residents to cover stormwater management costs. However, grants and statewide programs such as MVP will also assist in the process.
The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program, or MVP, which provides towns with support for climate change resiliency, has supported Groton's hazard mitigation and climate adaptation plan that aims to build the town's resilience against climate-induced natural disasters. A significant portion of this plan is focused on upgrading stormwater infrastructure and water conservation in the face of increased precipitation.
Furthermore, improperly managed stormwater runoff can result in soil erosion and flooding, which has impaired the Nashua River and the James Brook due to bacteria and excessive phosphorus. In our interview with the Wild and Scenic Rivers Committee, they emphasized the importance of riparian forest buffers around rivers in collecting runoff and dissipating pollutants. The efforts to protect riparian land in nearby towns have already met significant success, but it's necessary for these organizations to continue advocating for land conservation.
Evidently, water management is possible and especially necessary now in the face of climate change.
Of course, the only effective long-term solution against climate change is to curb emissions at a global level. But much could also be done at the local level to reduce the short and middle-term effects on water resources.
As summer droughts become more severe, the most critical next step our community should take is to increase resilience and to manage our water withdrawals through public education and conservation.
As precipitation becomes more intense, Groton should upgrade its green and gray infrastructure to curb excess stormwater runoff. Thank you all so much for watching our video.
And we can't wait to answer your questions in the Q&A section.